Well, in 1814 we took a little trip along with Colonel Jackson down the mighty Mississippi. We took a little bacon and we took a little beans, and we met the bloody British near the town of New Orleans. We fired our guns and the British kept a-coming, but there wasn't nigh as many as there was a while ago. We fired once more and they began to running on down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico. Well, I seed Mars Jackson a-walking down the street and a-talking to a pirate by the name of Jimmie Driftwood. He gave Gene a drink that he brung from Tennessee, and the pirate said he'd help us drive the British in the sea. The French told Andrew, you'd better run, for Pakenham's a-comin' with a bullet in his gun. Old Hickory said he didn't give a damn, he's a-gonna whip the britches off of Colonel Pakenham. We fired our guns and the British kept a-comin', but there wasn't nigh as many as there was a while ago. We fired once more and they began to running on down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico. Well, we looked down the river and we see the British come, and there must have been 100 of them beating on the drum. They stepped so high and they made their bugles ring while we stood beside our cotton bales, didn't say a thing. Old Hickory said we'd take 'em by surprise if we didn't fire a musket till we looked 'em in the eyes. We held our fire till we see their faces well, then we opened up our squirrel guns and really gave 'em hell. We fired our guns and the British kept a-coming, but there wasn't nigh as many as there was a while ago. We fired once more and they began to running on down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico. Well, they ran through the briars and they ran through the brambles and they ran through the bushes where a rabbit couldn't go. They ran so fast that the hounds couldn't catch 'em on down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico. Well, we fired our cannon till the barrel melted down, so we grabbed an alligator and we fought another round. We filled his head with mini balls and powdered his behind, and when we touched the powder off, the gator lost his mind. They lost their pants and their pretty shiny coats, and their tails were all a-showing like a bunch of billy goats. They run down the river with their tongues a-hanging out, and they said they got a licking, which there wasn't any doubt. We fired our guns and the British kept a-coming, but there wasn't nigh as many as there was a while ago. We fired once more and they began to running on down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico. Well, we marched back to town in our dirty ragged pants, and we danced all night with them pretty girls from France. We couldn't understand them, but they had the sweetest charms, and we understood them better when we got them in our arms. The guide who brung the British from the sea came a-limping into camp just as sick as he could be. He said the dying words of the Colonel Pakenham was, you better quit your fooling with your cousin Uncle Sam. We fired our guns and the British kept a-coming, but there wasn't nigh as many as there was a while ago. We fired once more and they began to running on down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico. Well, we'll march back home, but we'll never be content till we make old Hickory the people's president. And every time we think about the bacon and the beans, we'll think about the fun we had way down in New Orleans. We fired our guns and the British kept a-coming, but there wasn't nigh as many as there was a while ago. We fired once more and they began to running on down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico. Well, they ran through the briars and they ran through the brambles and they ran through the bushes where a rabbit couldn't go. They ran so fast that the hounds couldn't catch 'em on down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico. Fired our guns and the British kept a-coming, but there wasn't nigh as many as there was a while ago. We fired once more and they began to running on down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico. There once was a lawyer they called Mr. Clay. He had but few clients and they wouldn't pay. At last of starvation he grew so afraid that he courted and married a wealthy old maid. At the wedding the lawyer made one big mistake. 'Twas not in omitting the wine or the cake. The ring was well chosen, they had a big feed, but the lawyer did not get a warranty deed. That night in their chamber the lady arose and began to prepare to retire and repose. Her husband sat near her admiring her charms, which gave him such pleasure to hold in his arms. She went to the washstand to bathe her fair face, and thus she destroyed all her beauty and grace. The rose in her cheek quickly grew very faint, and he saw on the towel 'twas nothing but pain. He's a very unfortunate, a very unfortunate, a very unfortunate man. She went to the mirror to take down her hair, and when she had done so, her scalp was all bare. Said she, don't be frightened to see my bald head, I'll put on my cap when I get into bed. She hung her false hair on the wall on a peg, and then she proceeded to take off a leg. Her trembling husband thought sure he would die when she asked him to come and take out her glass eye. He's a very unfortunate, a very unfortunate, a very unfortunate man. The husband was biting his quivering lips while she was removing her counterfeit hips. Just then her false nose clattered down on the floor, and the poor lawyer screamed and ran out at the door. Now all you young men who would marry for life, be sure to examine your intended wife. Remember the lawyer who trusted his eyes, and a little bit later got quite a surprise. He's a very unfortunate, a very unfortunate, a very unfortunate man. In Rosamond's bower, at the edge of the town, I stopped for 1 hour, my sorrows to drown. Her dreams of tomorrow, 'neath bright stars above, turned all of my sorrow into eternal love. No one knew the hour that I met my true love in Rosamond's bower, 'neath the stars up above. Our love was our secret, held dear to our hearts. Only God and the angels knew that we were sweethearts. We talked of the flowers in fair Ireland, and while we were talking I held to her beautiful hand. In that precious hour, my grief I lay down in Rosamond's bower, at the edge of the town. In Rosamond's bower, there was joy in my heart. I had not the power to say we must part. I promised forever to treasure her name, and never, oh never, to leave her in shame. But I left her a-standing up on Donegal Bay. I've sailed every ocean and I'm lonesome today. If I had the power, my queen I would crown in Rosamond's bower, at the edge of the town. We talked of the flowers in fair Ireland, and while we were talking I held to her beautiful hand. In that precious hour, my grief I lay down in Rosamond's bower, at the edge of the town. Some Continental soldiers on the bivouac were playing stud poker in a mountain shack. But every vigilante threw down his hand when the captain of the guard gave the sharp command. Oh, Jimmy, get your fiddle out and roughen up the bow. Johnny Jr., band your up, we're gonna have a show. Billy, pass the jug around to Corporal McCoy. We're gonna have a tune called Soldier's Joy. The girls in Boston are dancing tonight. The Galdern redcoats are holding them tight. When we get there, we will show them how. But that ain't a-doing us no good now. So, Jimmy, get your fiddle out and rotten up the bow. Johnny Jr., banjo up, we're gonna have a show. Billy, pass the jug around to Corporal McCoy. We're gonna have a tune called Soldier's Joy. There goes General Washington, he's got his horse in a sweeping run. The barefooted boys are a-begging to fight, and we're gonna cross the Delaware River tonight. So, Jimmy, get your fiddle out and rotten up the bow. Johnny, tune the banjo up, we're gonna have a show. Billy, pass the jug around to Corporal McCoy. We're gonna have a tune called Soldier's Joy. Old Burgoyne in the wilderness got his army in an awful mess. The farmers got mad at the British and Huns and captured 10,000 of the son of a gun. So, Jimmy, get your fiddle out and rotten up the bow. Johnny, tune the banjo up, we're gonna have a show. Billy, pass the jug around to Corporal McCoy. We're gonna have a tune called Soldier's Joy. John Paul Jones in an old tin can scoured the ocean like a fighting man. The British said, Paul, are you ready to strike? And Paul said, I'm just beginning to fight. So, Jimmy, get your fiddle out and rotten up the bow. Johnny, tune the banjo up, we're gonna have a show. Billy, pass the jug around to Corporal McCoy. We're gonna have a tune called Soldier's Joy. General Washington and Rochambeau drinking their wine in the campfire's glow. Big Dan Morgan came a-galloping in, says we got Cornwallis in the old cow pen. So, Jimmy, get your fiddle out and rotten up the bow. Johnny, tune the banjo up, we're gonna have a show. Billy, pass the jug around to Corporal McCoy. We're gonna have a tune called Soldier's Joy. Wake up, buddy, have you heard the news? Grandma Britton got an awful bruise. The redcoats cried and cursed your town while the band played The World's Turned Upside Down. So, Jimmy, get your fiddle out and rosin up the bow. Johnny, tune the banjo up, we're gonna have a show. Billy, pass the jug around to Corporal McCoy. We're gonna have a tune called Soldier's Joy. A homemade fiddle and a mandolin, an old banjo and a tambourine, a big dumb bully for the drummer boy. Everybody loves to hear the soldier's joy. So, Jimmy, get your fiddle out and rosin up the bow. Johnny, tune the banjo up, we're gonna have a show. Billy, pass the jug around to Corporal McCoy. We're gonna have a tune called Soldier's Joy. Gonna have a tune called Soldier's Joy. Country boy's got plenty of corn, a buckskin saddle with a silver horn, the best old boy that ever was born. Saddles his mule on a moonlit night, finds him a girl to hold him tight, and don't come home to broad daylight. The country boy ain't no fool, he does his courting on a long-eared mule. Gets her up behind his saddle, tells her about his hogs and cattle. She knows good and well he won't daddle. Parks his mule by a shady tree, hugs her a little and says, oh gee, you know you're the only girl for me. The country boy, he ain't no fool, he does his courting on a long-eared mule. Found him a girl in Caroline, pretty little girl in Caroline. She fed him on chicken and she fed him on wine. Found him a girl in Tennessee, pretty little girl in Tennessee. She fed him on cake and sassafras tea. The country boy ain't no fool, he does his courting on a long-eared mule. The country boy's got a greenback bill, a little log cabin on the top of the hill, and he's just as happy as a whippoorwill. Got his mule and ready to go to take his girl to the do-si-do and shake his leg till the roosters crow. The country boy ain't no fool, he does his courting on a long-eared mule. The country boy sings tenor and bass, goes to the table with a poker face. Nobody giggles when he says grace. Makes no brags and he tells no lies, hugs all the girls and whips all the guys, and goes straight to heaven whenever he dies. The country boy ain't no fool, he does his courting on a long-eared mule. I had a gal from Arkansas who had a lot of pride. And when I met her, boy, and oh goodness, how I lied. A pretty gal from Tennessee sat down upon my lap, and when she started kissing me, I hollered for my pap. Chaw my backer, chaw my gum, drank my whiskey, drank my rum, shoot my mouth and shoot my gun, but I'm too young to marry. I wouldn't have a married girl, I'll tell you the reason why. I'd be afraid she'd take a whirl with some good-looking guy. And I wouldn't have a single gal, it's very plain to see. I cannot find a single gal who hankers after me. Chaw my backer, chaw my gum, drank my whiskey, drank my rum, shoot my mouth and shoot my gun, but I'm too young to marry. I found a gal with lots of buzz and very much alive. And when I asked how old she was, she answered 95. I told her I would be her boss and started in her door. She said, "Get out, you crazy horse, you're only 94. Chaw my backer, chaw my gum, drank my whiskey, drank my rum, shoot my mouth and shoot my gun, but I'm too young to marry." Someday I'm gonna settle down with some sweet Katy did, and teach my boys to run around just like their daddy did. Chaw my backer, chaw my gum, drank my whiskey, drank my rum, shoot my mouth and shoot my gun, but I'm too young to marry. At the foot of yonder mountain there runs a clear stream. At the foot of yonder mountain there lives a fair queen. She's handsome, she's proper, and her ways are complete, and I ask no better pastime than to kneel at her feet. Her father don't like me, and I understand. He's promised Lord Randall her lily white hand. Lord Randall has silver, Lord Randall has gold, but she'd rather shiver with me in the cold. Pretty Mary, I'd give all I own if I had Pretty Mary in the moonlight alone. Her father declares I shall see her no more. Her mother forbids me to knock on her door. They've locked her in the strong room where I've never been, and only Lord Randall is allowed to go in. I wish I was an eagle, like an eagle I'd fly o'er the ocean and the mountain tops high. I'd fly to her window with a wild eagle scream, and take my Pretty Mary to the land of my dream. Pretty Mary, I'd give all I own if I had Pretty Mary in the moonlight alone. I'd take her to a cabin on the mountain top wild, and care for Pretty Mary like she was my child. I'd fight the Lord Randall if he ever came nigh. For the love of Pretty Mary I gladly would die. Pretty Mary, I'd give all I own if I had Pretty Mary in a home of my own. When I first went with Uncle Sam, I thought that I was a mighty ram. I jumped up on a big marine, he whipped me till my face turned green. That's the life of a sailor man, he has to do the best he can. That's the life of a sailor man, he has to do the best he can. Found me a girl in Baltimore, she gave me the key to her back door. day she said goodbye and gave that key to another guy. That's the life of a sailor man, he has to do the best he can. That's the life of a sailor man, he has to do the best he can. I found me a babe in New Orleans, she was one of them Cajun queens. We danced all night at the Roosevelt, I lost my girl and my money belt. That's the life of a sailor man, he has to do the best he can. That's the life of a sailor man, he has to do the best he can. When I was in Los Angeles, I found me a blonde that I loved to squeeze. I asked her if she'd marry me, but she had a husband on the sea. That's the life of a sailor man, he has to do the best he can. That's the life of a sailor man, he has to do the best he can. We landed in Eureka Bay and I found me a lovely Moussamay. She said she never liked Japan until she found a sailor man. That's the life of a sailor man, he has to do the best he can. That's the life of a sailor man, he has to do the best he can. When I put up my 20 years, I ain't gonna shed no salty tears. Find me a woman if I can who understands a sailor man. That's the life of a sailor man, he has to do the best he can. That's the life of a sailor man, he has to do the best he can. There's a cozy little cottage where the morning glories clamber and the ivy vines are creeping around the door, where the fairest flowers are springing and the wild bird's notes are ringing as they echo through the woodland door and door. And within that little cottage dwells a maiden pure and true, with hair of sunny golden and lips of a rosy hue, and her arms around me twining while the stars are softly shining as she whispers, I will love none else but you. And her voice is sweet and tender as the moonlight on the sea. Her brown eyes soft and beaming are filled with love for me, and my happy heart is beating while the rosy hours are fleeting as I sit beside my darling Zelma Lee. Zelma Lee, Zelma Lee, as I sit beside my darling Zelma Lee. And my happy heart is beating while the rosy hours are fleeting as I sit beside my darling Zelma Lee. Like a winsome little fairy with her step so light and airy, round the cottage she is flitting all the day. And the music of her singing like the wild bird's notes is ringing as it echoes in the woodland far away. And her voice is sweet and tender as the moonlight on the sea. Her bright eyes softly beaming are filled with love for me, and my happy heart is beating while the rosy hours are fleeting as I sit beside my darling Zelma Lee. Zelma Lee, Zelma Lee, as I sit beside my darling Zelma Lee. And my happy heart is beating while the rosy hours are fleeting as I sit beside my darling Zelma Lee. When the nightly dew is falling and the mockingbird is calling, then we often stroll together on the shore, where the silvery waters glisten and the wavelets seem to listen to our vows so oft repeated o'er and o'er. Then my darling softly tells me in her sweet and winning tone, with summer I may claim her forever as my own. And I whisper that I love her as the moonbeams seem to hover with a blessing that is meant for us alone. And and her voice is sweet and tender as the moonlight on the sea. Her brown eyes softly beaming are filled with love for me, and my happy heart is beating while the rosy hours are fleeting as I sit beside my darling Zelma Lee. Zelma Lee, Zelma Lee, as I sit beside my darling Zelma Lee. And my happy heart is beating while the rosy hours are fleeting as I sit beside my darling Zelma Lee. On a rattlesnake me-why mountain I did wee-why well, and I heard a stee-why story I'm gonna tee-why tell. Come a roo-die-roo-die-roo. A nice young me-why man in the month of me-my May went down to the pee-why field for to mow. Here's a he-why hey, come a roo-die-roo-die-roo. He had not mow-why woed around the fee-why field till a rattle come a snee-why wake and bit him on the he-why heel. Come a roo-die-roo-die-roo. He jumped up a he-why high and looked all ree-why round. Then he closed his e-why eye and fell to the g-why ground. Come a roo-die-roo-die-roo. He cried, little B-Y bird, go tell my G-Y gal I'm a rattlesnake B-Y bitten and eat my C-Y sal. Come a roo-die-roo-die-roo. Oh, the bird did flee-why fly and spread the new-why news, and here came C-why Sally without her shoe-why shoes. Come a roo-die-roo-die-roo. Oh, Johnny D-Y dear, why did you go? Why go into the fee-why field, the hay for the mow-why woe? Come a roo-die-roo-die-roo. Oh, Sally D-Y dear, I thought you'd know. I know when the hay gets a ree-right ripe, it's a got to be mow-why woe. Come a roo-die-roo-die-roo. Oh, Johnny D-Y dear, I'll save your lee-why life if I may be-why be your sweet little wee-why wife. Come a roo-die-roo-die-roo. She grabbed his lee-why leg and made him squee-why squeal and sucked the poison blood all out of his he-why heel. Come a roo-die-roo-die-roo. Come all young me-why men and a warning T-why take. Don't ever get a B-why bit by rattle, copper, snee-why wake. Come a roo-die-roo-die-roo. When a rattlesnake B-why bites, it hurts like a knee-why knife. When a woman B-why bites, you're bit for the rest of your life. Come a roo-die-roo-die-roo. Old Joe Clark's a rough old man, mean as he can be. He knocked me down with his right hand and walked all over me. Get out of the way for old Joe Clark, hide that jug of wine. Get out of the way for old Joe Clark, he's no friend of mine. Old Joe Clark, he used to be the biggest bum in town, till Andrew Johnson appointed him the marshal of the town. He's full of wine and full of breeze, and you ought to hear him brag, but all good rebels know that he's a low-down scalawag. Get out of the way for old Joe Clark, hide that jug of wine. Get out of the way for old Joe Clark, he's no friend of mine. When old Joe Clark comes to my door, he treats me like a pup. He runs my bear dogs under the floor and drinks my whiskey up. He puts his banjo in my hand, tells me what to play, and dances with my pretty little girl until the break of day. Get out of the way for old Joe Clark, hide that jug of wine. Get out of the way for old Joe Clark, he's no friend of mine.